What's up, guys? We are back with another Super 7 Ultimates TMNT Wave 6 review, taking a look at the other good guy in this wave. We had Mikey, and we also got Ace Duck. Now, this is one of the figures that, as a kid, was never on my favorites list because he was just a duck. So it just didn't do anything for me. But, you know, he still kind of has a place from a nostalgic perspective. So I'm still really excited to take a look at this guy, see what they did to, you know, modernize him in some way. He, of course, comes in our standard Super 7 Ultimate style packaging. So you've got the slipcover, we got the trapezoidal shape, of course. So you've got that ooze green on the front with our manhole cover, our Ace Duck manhole cover, Turtles logo on the back as usual. Pop that slipcover off, and you've got your figure there in all of his glory with all of his accessories. You've got your green good guy brick graffiti motif, and then the back of the box, as usual, gives us our bio for our fine feathered friends. So let's do it. Let's pull him out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our Super 7 Ultimates Ace Duck. You know, a figure and character that, frankly, I've never been that big on. Like, he's a duck, and the pilot thing never really, resonated with me as a kid. I do like the vintage figure, and, you know, obviously I had it, but he was never, on my top 10 list for sure. So I've been really curious to see, you know, if this guy was going to change my perception of him, and I'm not so sure that he does. There's a lot about this figure that I like, but there's probably just as much that I don't like. And some of it's articulation, most of it's kind of his just overall design, though. So let's see what he can do, see how he moves around. We've got a head that is fairly locked down. He really doesn't do a whole lot. Slightly up, a little bit down. You've got some good tilt, though. I do like that. And then you've got rotation. Arms out at the shoulders all the way. They rotate all the way around, of course. We've got a bicep swivel. We've got single jointed about 90 degrees. And you've got rotation at the elbows. Hinges, rotation at those wrists, of course. Now, the torso is an area of, well, concern, I guess, because he doesn't really do a whole lot. And you've also got, if you want to use it, you've got the tail to contend with. And it's got this really small port on the back. And it's not a deep port either, so I just don't think it's in there very good. If you move it around too much, there's a possibility it could fall out. And if you hinge it forward and backward, you know, you might sort of wiggle it out too. It might not happen now, but it's happened enough that I'm talking about it. It is just a single buck torso, so there is no crunch, there's no diaphragm cut, and there's not really much more beyond this sort of shimmy right here either. I wish he did a little bit more. I mean, just with any other figure, I wish more was possible. We've got, you know, full rotation though, so that's okay. But you do have to watch that tail because it is going to get in the way. And he's got a weird butt too, so it sort of makes it even weirder. It's like if you take the tail off, it'll look like the tail is inside the jeans. But when they're on, it's sort of like this weird hump back there. Legs go out all the way, so that's nice. They kick forward pretty much all the way as well. Not much backwards. You do have your thigh twist there. We've got our single jointed knees. The tail actually does kind of get in the way of this. Let's just take it off. It does get in the way a little bit. He's got better than 90 degrees. And then you've got rotation there too. We've got rotation at the ankle, so the joint is separate from the actual leg itself. You've got some really nice forward hinge, but not a lot backwards just because of how those cuffs are built. And then you've got a little bit of rocker action there too. And so, yeah, he's okay. You know, this tail kind of bothers me from a moving standpoint. It's not like it truly gets in the way a lot, but I feel like it's always going to fall out when you just sort of move him the wrong way, or you move him too harsh, or you move him too quickly. He's fairly normal for Ultimates, though. The one thing I truly, truly wish he had was something more at the waist, and one of those deeper ball-pegged waists, you know, kind of like what I wanted to see on Casey Jones, for example, would have benefited him really, really well. Now, aesthetically, he's a duck man, and I've never been the biggest fan of Ace Duck. It's mostly, I mean, he's a duck. It just doesn't do it for me. That said, he's still a pretty cool figure, and there is that whole bomber jacket, fighter pilot motif that I know a lot of folks care about. It's not a thing for me personally, but I do think, you know, it definitely ratchets up the cool factor on a duck man to make him this sort of you know, fighter pilot, sort of smarmy kind of guy. And for the most part, I do think he looks pretty good, but there are a few things about this figure that I also just don't like. The big thing, and I know it's the thing everybody's been talking about, is the jacket color. It is too bright, or too light. Not bright, it's too light. It's closer to tan than it is brown, and that's just not right. It should be darker than that. And I feel like in some ways, he's almost too yellow too. I don't think that's the correct way to say it, but the colors on his jacket in particular kind of skew the entire figure for me. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. He's also It's kind of small too, and I'm not so sure that he needs to be big, but he's one of those kind of rare instances of this line where the figure is maybe a little bit smaller than you expect him to be, especially compared to a turtle. And we'll do some size comparisons, of course, here in a bit to show you exactly how small this guy is. He's probably around Mondo's size, and Mondo is, of course, a pretty small figure too. There is a lot of detail on this figure, though, especially on the torso, and of course the jacket can come off because there is a replaceable jacket. But the sleeves are part of the arm, so you're never going to have like this, burly, bare-chested Ace Duck on your shelf. He's always going to have those jacket sleeves. I think the jacket does look good despite my color gripes with it. You've got holes in the back for the wings, which we will talk about. He has his always weird Turtles logo on the back. Of course that makes no sense for him to have the Turtles logo on his own jacket, but that's how the vintage figure was. You've got your tail feathers that do stick out, and the sculpt on him is really nice. There's a good dry brushing of sort of a darker yellow over top of a lighter yellow, and then there's almost like this little blue-gray color in there as well. You do have like the wings on the jacket, and you've got a duck head over here that is just done up in blue, and we've got his sort of rank insignia thing over here on his torso. The legs do not have any paint on them, really. They are just sort of blue jeans, but they look decent enough. They are, again, kind of on the small side, though. His feet do look really good, so you've got, of course, the webbed feet, nice bright orange, but there is some dry brushing over them also just to sort of bring that out and to give it a little bit more depth and bring out some of those like scales almost on whatever you call those on a bird's foot. Feathers all over the hands do look good, and there is more of that wash and dry brushing over top of every bit of feather on this figure, so it's all sort of like cast in what I believe is just sort of a really, really bright white leaning yellow color, or yellow leaning white maybe is a better way to describe it, with a dark kind of canary yellow dry brushed over top of it just to sort of bring all of that out. And then we have our head sculpt up here, which this is not my favorite head sculpt of the two, but this is of course the classic, the vintage, and it makes sense for this to be the one that's on him in the box. It's always seemed like a really cartoony head to me, especially in the vintage line. It always just seemed like he had these bright, big, cartoon-style eyes, and I think Super7 did a really good job of capturing that here. Whether I think it fits or not, I think it looks really good. He's got that crazy, toothy smile, the big grin on his face, so he looks, he almost looks like he's tweaking, which a lot of vintage Turtles figures kind of look like that, but he sort of looks like he's, on something. But I think the paint and the sculpt, the bill looks really good, and it definitely contrasts nicely to the bright, bright yellow. You've got this sort of, orange bill with the white teeth, the black and white eyes, and then a lot of that wash and dry brushing up in those feathers to make him stand out. We've also got our belt/bandolier, which comes on him in the box. We will talk about that a bit more here when we get to accessories, because of course that's a big focal point for some of the various things that he comes with. So overall, I do like a lot about the way this figure looks, but I also think that there is just as much about him that I don't like. And most of it comes down to the fact that I, for some reason, expected him to be bigger, and also that jacket is just not the right shade of brown, tan, or whatever color we're going to call it. And then as far as some size comparisons go, let's start with some other Ultimates, some other TMNT Ultimates. So we've got Ace in the middle, of course. We've got Raph here on the left and Scratch here on the right. And Scratch is not a huge figure, but he's bigger than average. And, Turtles are kind of the baseline. And you can see that Ace is shorter than the Turtles, so that tells you just how small he is. He is definitely on the smaller end of Ultimates for sure. And this is why I say I kind of wish he was a little bit bigger. Next to the Turtles, he just looks a little scrawny. Now, as far as some other stuff, let's move Scratch aside. There is the ever-present May He Never Leave My Side Speedball. And then let's do a Mythic Legion, so let's move Raph aside. And there is Keltus. And you can see he's a lot taller, Speedball's a lot taller. And then let's throw something in that's a little bit smaller. So here is a Plunderling, and you can see, this dude comes up to right around pec area on Ace, so he is definitely shorter. He'll scale just fine, because it's a weird mix of goofy anthropomorphic animals, but I no doubt wish that he was at least just a little bit bigger, maybe slightly taller than the Turtles. Now, as far as accessories goes, this is where Ace kind of saves himself a bit for me. I do wish that he was taller. I wish he had a darker colored jacket. But the head sculpt and the wings really change him up for me. It really makes me a little bit more happy with how he's looking. This really plays into the fighter pilot aspect. So like a World War II dogfighter kind of pilot. So you've got the headpiece on, which coincidentally is the shade of brown I kind of wish the jacket was, because it's darker. You've got the goggles, which these are removable. You could use them on either head sculpt. So they're brown and gray. You've got the furrowed brow, you've got the fully exposed row of teeth, gridded expression, but it's this, I'll never understand how they got it past the licensor's cigar. I just don't understand how we managed to get this. It seems like something you would never get on a Turtles figure, but he has a cigar in his teeth and he is ready to throw down, and I think they did a really good job with this head sculpt. It absolutely changes the entire demeanor of the figure. I still wish he was taller, and I wish his jacket was darker, but this head sculpt does help me out a lot for just enjoying Ace a little bit more. Now, we do, of course, have our wings. These peg into the back, they hinge, and they rotate. And this is where the tail kind of comes into play because, of course, the tail was sort of part of the wings in the vintage figure. It's not really the case here. And, you can't really fold the wings 100% closed either. They go about like that. I kind of wish you could do a little bit more, but I'm always going to have them like this. There's tons of sculpt here, tons of detail, lots of dry brushing all over it too. It's more of that yellow with like a slight dark yellowy orange color all over it. And then like I said before, this particular jacket has the holes in it, so you can display him with the wings because you need the jacket on him at all times. But if you want, you can replace the jacket with this one, which is just a normal one, so no wings for this one. And then you could take the tail off also, and like I said, you've got the little butt bump back here to imply that the tail is inside of his pants. And then you could have him so where he's like a clean Ace Duck. So you've got just the jacket, no wings, no tail, and you can kind of make it more in line with how a vintage figure might be if he didn't have the wings. Of course, the vintage figure only had a singular piece that pegged in the back, so they did do individual wings this time around. We do, of course, have our egg bombs for this bandolier, and you can adjust this to be tighter or looser. I think I like it around his chest like this. I always use the vintage one as a belt, but on the card back, on the card art, it was shown as a bandolier. So you do get 6 of these. So you get 2 extras. I'm probably going to lose them as soon as I'm done filming here. We do get an extra bit for the regular head sculpt, so we get a hat. And this is definitely meant for this head sculpt because it is like relief sculpted on the inside. So it has the inverse of the head here, so it will very much like just sit. And it fits this head perfectly. So I'm really happy with this. It's more of that light brown plastic though. Again, I do wish that it was a little bit darker. We do get a bunch of hands, so he comes with gripping hands on him in the box. We get a set, of course the set here is going to be 2. You get a set of fists. We get a set of like flat palm, almost handshake kind of hands. You get a set of trigger finger hands, and you get a set of style pose hands. So you get 10 total hands with this guy. And then we also get 2 guns. So he had a pistol in the vintage figure. He gets a pistol here. I think the shape is kind of awkward, but it's very vintagey. Sort of that gray blue with some brown accents on it. But the main attraction for weaponry is going to be the Tommy gun, and this thing looks fantastic. This, again, goes along with this idea. So the grizzled fighter pilot, dog fighter type of pilot, and it just very much works for this type of idea. So he does come with a lot of cool stuff. I'm really happy with his accessory loadout. I don't know that it makes up for some of my problems. I still wish he was taller, and I still wish the jacket was darker. But being able to change up the display like this, have the grenades on him, have the wings, maybe use the tail, don't use the tail, however you want to do it. But this head sculpt really, really changes this figure for me. And of course, in keeping with the trend, we do get a weapons rack or sprue with this guy, and his is pretty wild because it incorporates a lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with his accessory loadout. So we get a set of landing gear for his frame, and it's only a handful of things that he comes with. So you get the belt bandolier, you get the gun, and you get the egg grenades. That's it. It's kind of a weird loadout, but I do really like it. I mean, it's definitely inventive and it's fun and it's different. I don't know what I'm going to do with this one because they're just gray, so they're not as exciting as say some of Slash's pink weapons, but I do like the idea with this one. And of course, I love when they incorporate something about the characteristics of the figure into making just making one of these goofy, somewhat vintagey callbacks. So yeah, overall, Ace Duck is a pretty solid figure, but he's not without his problems. Again, my big gripe with him is that I think he should be bigger. I think he should be a slightly bigger figure. He just seems really scrawny. And then again, the jacket is not the right color. It's too tan, too light brown. It needs to be darker brown. it's not the hugest thing in the world, but it's also something that should have been easy to get right, I guess is the best way to say it. Sculpt otherwise does look really good. There's a lot of feather textural detail all over that figure. I do think the tail is kind of a pain point just because it seems to get in the way. It looks good, but it kind of gets in the way. And then of course, the wings, they're big, bulky wings, so they're going to take up some shelf presence, but he looks to me infinitely cooler with the wings on him than without. And then that alt head is just tremendous. It really plays up the fighter pilot aspect of the figure. The cigar, I'm still surprised they were able to get that in there. I think it's fantastic. It changes his entire demeanor, and if anything, it makes the figure into something so much more than his sort of standard vintage loadout. So that's going to do it for this look at the Super 7 Ultimates TMNT Wave 6 Ace Duck. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.